See, as Washington telegraphs demands for unconditional surrender from Iran, its proxies missiles are impacting luxury hotels and striking deep within Allied territory. This is happening while Allied governments are forced to send a message no state ever wants to admit to its own citizens. We can no longer guarantee your protection. This widening chasm between official pronouncements and physical reality is no longer a political debate. It has become the single most critical, underpriced risk to the stability you've worked to build. This analysis is designed to give you the framework to see what's actually happening and to understand the trajectory of this conflict. To begin, we must look past the headlines and examine the architecture of the conflict itself. Because the first piece of evidence is not a policy statement or a news report. It is a technical vulnerability, a fundamental flaw in the West's defensive shield that has been decisively broken. That technical vulnerability, that broken shield, is Israel's multi-billion-dollar missile defense network. A system once considered impenetrable has been strategically neutralized. Iran did not simply overpower it, they dismantled it with a sophisticated two-stage strategy. First, they blinded the network's eyes. Satellite imagery confirms targeted strikes destroyed key early warning radars, including the 1.1 billion AN FPS-132, creating a systemic, blinding effect. With the network blind, they then overwhelmed the remaining interceptors, the fists, with a sustained volume of attacks. The consequence is catastrophic. Early warning times for the population have collapsed from over 15 minutes to as little as 60 seconds. This was confirmed when Israel's own emergency system messaged 7 million citizens that it could no longer guarantee warnings, telling them to figure out your own survival from here. That is not a defense system. That is a countdown clock, and that countdown clock just struck zero. The trigger was a historic miscalculation. For the first time, Bahrain, a key US ally, abandoned its long-standing strategic posture and launched a direct attack on Iran. The response was not tactical. It was systemic. A coordinated, region-wide assault was unleashed that same night. Suddenly, the conflict was no longer a distant problem. It was everywhere. Strikes hit the US Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. At the same time, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the forward headquarters of US Central Command, went into a full emergency lockdown. Every phone in the country lit up with the same alert. Stay indoors. Move away from windows. Then, the economic heart was targeted. Dubai International Airport. The Burj Al Arab Hotel. These were not collateral damage. They were primary targets. The very symbols of global commerce and stability became active war zones. Bahrain's defenses did intercept 78 missiles and over 140 drones, but this data doesn't signal success. It signals the overwhelming scale of an attack that could not be stopped. The illusion of containment is gone. The illusion of safety for global capital has been shattered. But the most dangerous illusion is not the one now burning in the Gulf. Why, it's the one still held in Washington. And that illusion is a simple, yet catastrophic divergence between public rhetoric and physical reality. The most dangerous element of this crisis is not the missiles themselves, but this widening chasm. On one side, you have the official narrative. In the last week alone, the president has claimed 7 different times that Iran is breaking, or ready to deal. A message of absolute dominance, culminating in the public declaration, there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. While this is the official message, the physical reality, measured in missile impacts on Dubai and Doha, tells an entirely different story. The pattern is undeniable. Each of these claims of imminent victory has been followed within hours by Iran launching another wave of strikes, each larger than the one before. This isn't just a credibility problem, it's a critical, strategic warning signal. This disconnect points to one of two systemic failures, both terminal for an effective strategy. Either the president is not being told the truth by his intelligence agencies, or he is, and is choosing not to share it with you. Both paths lead to disaster because they prevent any possibility of course correction. This is the architecture of strategic failure. When a population is managed with a narrative, rather than informed by reality, catastrophic miscalculations become inevitable, and that inevitable miscalculation is now being priced, or rather mispriced, into global markets and your portfolio. Here is how the geopolitical crisis translates directly into a financial shockwave. First, the physical reality. The conflict threatens the Strait of Hormuz, the artery through which 20 to 25% of all global oil flows. This is not a distant headline. It is a direct squeeze on the world's energy supply. We see the immediate impact in the data. Brent crude has surged to over $82 a barrel. Goldman Sachs calculates a $14 risk premium is already baked into that price, with a clear trajectory toward 100 plus oil if this escalates. The artery is constricting and the system pressure is building. Simultaneously, a second, more insidious force is at play: the false victory narrative from leadership. This creates a dangerous complacency in financial markets. The market is acting like a homeowner who hears a fire alarm but doesn't smell smoke yet. He assumes it's a false alarm because the last few were, but this time the house is actually on fire. This disconnect creates the core risk. As one analyst at Yahoo Finance stated, markets are systematically underpricing the tail risk of a sustained engagement because they have been trained to expect quick, clean resolutions. This is the aha moment. The critical vulnerability in your portfolio is the gap between military reality and market perception. Your assets are exposed not just to the war itself, but to the market's politically induced blindness to its true scale. Based on this data, what is the one adjustment you are now considering for your portfolio to hedge against this new systemic risk? Share your strategic thoughts below. You now see the clear and present danger to your capital. But to understand why the markets are so profoundly blind to it, you must first understand the strategic architecture that makes this conflict structurally unwinnable for the West. The entire Western strategy is built on a single, demonstrably false assumption: that Iran is a brittle regime on the verge of collapse. The physical reality signals the opposite. Following the death of its leader, Iran's foreign ministry announced the assembly of experts could select a successor in 1 or 2 days. This is not the chaotic power vacuum we witnessed in Libya or Iraq. This is the sign of a resilient, functioning state system. Collapsing systems don't elect leaders. Functioning systems do. And because this core premise is false, all three pillars of the US strategy are failing. First, the military pillar, a defensive shield which has now been cracked. The goal was containment through technological superiority. The reality is that Iranian-supplied hypersonic missiles are bypassing US defenses at will and have already neutralized a significant portion of regional Patriot missile systems. There is no longer a viable military defense. Pause. The military reality is grim, but it's what the generals already understand. The next pillar, the economic front, is what 99% of market analysts are getting dead wrong. If you don't grasp this paradox, you'll misread every capital flow signal for the next 18 months. Second, the economic pillar. a sanctions regime which has now backfired. The goal was to cripple Iran's economy. The reality is that after decades of sanctions, Iran is now inflicting more economic damage on the global system through its leverage over the Strait of Hormuz than it is receiving. The weapon has been turned against its user. Third, the diplomatic pillar. A path to negotiation that is now a dead end. The goal is a ceasefire, but the one concession that could achieve it is politically impossible for Washington to make, acknowledging that its own military presence is the root of the conflict. With no room for this fundamental negotiation, there is no diplomatic off-ramp. So, the military pillar has crumbled, the economic pillar has inverted, and the diplomatic pillar is a dead end. What this signals is a stark conclusion. A war the West is systemically losing is being concealed by a manufactured narrative of victory. A once impenetrable defensive shield has been breached. The conflict has metastasized into stable economic hubs, and capital markets remain willfully blind to the accumulating mispriced risk. This is the new reality. We must now operate in a world where we cannot trust official narratives. As the saying goes, history is now being written in the gap between what powerful people claim and what the weapons are actually doing. Your ability to see and navigate that gap is no longer a strategic advantage. It is the single most critical skill for preserving your capital. This is not a call to panic. It is a call to pay attention, to prioritize verifiable data over soothing rhetoric. If you are committed to clear-eyed analysis for navigating what comes next, subscribe. The work continues.